we're like close enough to really like, yo, I was in New York when I was 10 for like 3 months, and I brought back the culture, yo. Like I hear that shit. That's what happens when I do this with Montreal people.
Like they brought him.
That happens all a lot everywhere.
No,
Kind
but
of
for
Right.
real,
like
but
everybody kind of,
especially
that's
if
how
like
it
if
got
you were like
spread
in New York
initially.
in the 90s at all, and you happen to be like in a hood for like 4 weeks with your boy, and you saw like anything or bought any record or copied any music videos and shit, you got it like 2 years before Montreal did. And like, bro, this is, and I'm not knocking this, but this is like a badge of honor to people. Like, yo, I went to New York. That's a badge. All of a sudden, like, it doesn't matter. People were like liking that shit that don't pay attention to me just because you went to New York, bro. It doesn't matter. You went there.
I mean, yeah, that's
Listen,
it works. It works both ways, but also that's like a New York thing. Like whenever,
yes,
yeah,
we're always on the cutting edge of everything happening at all times, to the point where sometimes New York gets behind an artist from somewhere else
mm-hmm,
before their own region gets behind that artist.
yeah,
And New York kind of sets a tone, and everybody's always kind of late behind us. I just
facts.
finished going to Montreal in 2019, 18, 19, and 19. And when I went, they were playing like like I was at spots and like cars were driving by and they were playing like Cardi B's Bloody Shoes, and I'm like, this is like a year late, fam.
Word.
Like,
It's
why
like
are you
we're done
just
with
now
this.
getting? But that's
That's
the
how it
rest of the
is, though,
world
because we only
the
like
rest
get
of the
it once
world
it's
was getting
big.
behind that record because New York made it so big and New York made it so, and
Yeah.
so we'll abandon the record. 6 months later, the rest of the world is like, yo, this record is popping. And it's New York is like, oh, we're already done with that.
Right.
We've moved on. Like, this is,
And
so yeah.
you know what else is crazy? Speaking of the 2000s, is like the mixtape game in New York was crazy too.
Crazy.
Because like if you look at the way people look at 50 Cent, like the way people look at 50 Cent, sometimes I have to remind myself that they don't know about his, like 50 Cent has been an artist long before he met Eminem and Dr. Dre, and has like
Mm-hmm.
so much music and history, right? And like a lot of that, like everyone in New York was sort of on because of like the mixtapes and all that. So he was like signed to Sony Records. He had music with J Lo and Beyonce and all crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? Even before the whole shot 9 times thing. But every time I hear people talk about 50 and they talk about the beginning of his story is like, oh, when M
Get
found
rich or
him.
die trying.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I'm like, when M found him, like, nah, fam. Like, you don't know about God's plan. You don't know about all that other shit he was doing. Power of a Dollar. But like New York.
Actually, no, nobody does. I reviewed Garage and I Trying, and I got a comment on this like on my video the other day, and he's like, "Well, why does none of the reviewers ever cover Power to a Dollar?" Like, and then you think about it, it's because none of the people who cover this kind of shit actually dive into 50s past for some reason. I feel like
I
because he
mean,
has the one album,
it's
nobody
funny.
ever like. And I don't mean he doesn't have it, but in the eyes of like a lot of people, he has the one album that's hot, and everything else is not hot to most people in the instant perception of 50.
Wow.
I mean,
Massacre gets
a
like
little
some
bit.
love.
I was gonna say dragging a little bit because Massacre was like a lot of people considered that a classic. Still, I did not.
Yeah, yeah.
I was already done with Fit by the time Massacre was coming out, right? Because I had, like Baxter said, I rode the
Yeah.
whole ride. You
It
know
was
what I
a long,
mean?
and it was a long.
So
He had a
and
long
it was
run
a
for us.
long run, and it's crazy because I was gonna say actually he has the reverse of what Eminem has, where like people act like Infinite was a mass-produced album that
Right.
everybody heard at the time,
Yeah.
and I'm
Nobody.
like,
Yeah.
bullshit. Nobody heard that shit. Everybody heard it once Napster existed,
Yep.
and kids that like kids like quote Wikipedia about that album. It when it's like, yo, but that those reviews did not. Nobody even saw the reviews. Nobody even
Yo,
knew.
nobody even knew that album
Nobody
existed.
knew
No,
that
like,
album.
actually,
You know
like,
why? Because
if you really like look
back then,
into
there
it,
was no internet.
like it
No
actually he
internet.
paid for promo for one of the songs. It was a complete flop. He was depressed after that. That's when he's like writing Rock Bottom and shit because that album flopped so hard that like it didn't do what he was
I
hoping
mean, and
for.
also it deserved the flop too. Like, if we're being honest about it, like the music he was making there was like generic, and he was copying AZ and people's flows and shit like that, and it was like that shit was not
That didn't ever stop because then he ended up copying Master Ace's flow. So
right. But at least it was more entertaining and more like actual music that put out that you could become an artist with. Like, this shit is like the Infinite sounds like, oh, you a rapper that goes to open mics, don't you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you've one of 100 rappers who rap.
No, arguably though, anybody that I've ever met that thinks Infinite is his best album is a rapper that goes to open mics type person. Like, if there was like a type
Infinite
beat,
is
it's
Eminem's best album,
bro.
just nod your head and stop the conversation.
But again, the reason I brought it up, right, is like it's so weird, right? That it is the reverse of 50.
Right. Because 50 has so much.
You don't have to beg people. They're like, wait, we know Eminem's whole, and then you have an artist who
like
is arguably equally as big as Eminem, right? In 50 Cent, this is a mogul. This is like a incredibly famous, popular person
who's still relevant.
Who's still relevant?
Not for music, but still relevant.
I'm sorry. The Power theme song slaps.
Circles.
It don't slap in people's iPods. It slaps before Power comes on.
I mean, I have that shit hearted on my. Anyway, I'm not against.
Okay, I could be wrong.
Point being, right? Like, he fucking should have the same respect, and people do not.
Yeah.
Yo, but here's what it is, and this is another thing that I learned a lot about, honestly, because of this whole experience through end of the week and whatnot, is that mixtape shit. So here's the thing. I can't speak for everybody, but I can certainly speak for being a Montreal white dude from, being born in 87 and shit and coming in through that early internet. It's all the studio albums everybody was really grabbing because that's what you could find. That's what you knew about. And a lot of this mixtape shit was invisible. Like, honestly, invisible to me till at least 2012. And by then, if you're, like, old and you never grew up with mixtapes, the first time you hear Gangsta Grizzle all over some shit, you're like, fuck a mixtape a little bit if you're me.
So that's kind of my original point, is like the mixtape game is so crazy in New York that, like, there's so much shit. Like, I remember hearing you would hear different versions of songs because albums would get leaked way before the album came out. So I heard a completely different version of College Dropout than the actual released version of College Dropout. To the point that sometimes
I heard a super different version of Tragedy Gaddafi's Against All Odds album.
Right.
That did not like there were tracks that didn't ever.
There
was a track he had with fucking RZA and Cameron. I'm like, you didn't put the camera on feature, but that's because I'm young and I don't know no better. Then I get to, like, work in the industry, and it's like,
right. Sometimes
you probably couldn't clear. You couldn't clear somebody, and that song couldn't make it for that reason. But the point is, we would hear that like nothing. It was nothing to us.
Yeah, that's
all the time.
It's wild because, like, that's the thing I think a lot of people don't know about is how, like, big the mixtape world was and how that culture existed where, like, or even just the reusing of beats. Like, that shit was weird until I realized.
Oh, shit.
Like, for me, that was a huge learning curve. Even now, I still have trouble with it. Like, it's not my go-to thing in life. If somebody bodies somebody else's beat, I'm like, cool, but I like the original.
Yo, shout out to J Arms for putting out those mixtapes. But no, but that's how 50 Cent.
Shouts to J Arms. You're the first person in this whole series to shout out J Arms in over a year now.
How to be an MC, yo.
Yo, how to be an MC. J Arms was a DJ that only did mixtapes that were the instrumentals of all the songs. And what was dope about J Arms was that, like, he put out like a mixtape, and it was like, okay, this is what's popping right now.
Right now, yeah.
And here goes the instrumentals to it. But then also at the end of the mixtape, it was just these random instrumentals that were like of like songs that were getting put out in the industry that you might have not heard.
Yep.
That were kind of like more crack than the instrumental at the beginning of which was like, oh, I'm gonna rap over in the club like everybody else at the time who's rapping over in the club, or I could rap over fucking what's his name? Jay what's his name? That battle
Quan?
rap. No, that battle rap then and was from Harlem. He battled against Mook, and he fucking signed to Lil Wayne's Jay why can't I remember his fucking name? He signed to Lil Wayne.
I keep wanting to say J Hood, but it's definitely not J Hood.
No, it's not J Hood. Whatever, J Hood, a J Hood song,
right?
A J Hood song that
for the sake of this,
a doper beat, you know.
And then he would also do like best of, so he would like best of Biggie Smalls, and we'd be like all fucking just fire Biggie Smalls beats through the whole thing. And for like an MC, remember the internet's not popping. Napster, if it is around, is just new. How else were you ever gonna get your hands on like just a whole fucking shit ton of beats to rap to?
It's like, yo, like, that's the thing that for me is wild, right? Because since I ever started rapping, it's like, yo, they've just been there. There's always been a thing.
They were always there for you.
And you're not even just like there was always there. I've just always been able to find exclusives and shit at like reasonable prices and shit. It's never even been a thought to me.
That's the reason that part of the mixtape game kind of died, where it was like, yo, that's why Drake's and J. Cole.
In fact, it was more like I'm watching court cases on copyright at that time. That's really what's going on too. Is like you're realizing YouTube copyright's happening. It's like, yo, so why am I gonna go rap on next man's beat? I don't understand this shit. But then it's like,
that's again.
Now it's like having talked to all of y'all and like hearing about the experiences. It's like, okay, this makes sense now. Like to me, it's like the shadow has been lifted and I see the light and shit. But like, yo, it's like I don't think a lot of people, at least that I know, get the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations where it's why it's super cool to hear you put that emphasis on the mixtape game. I mean, or how popping it was, or how influential it was, or how you got beats as a rapper back then. Because, yo, frankly, I don't know how other people did it back then, but I know how people did it in my age, and it's mad so different. You would never think to look at. Sometimes the problem with Google is you don't know what to Google. Not that you can't Google it. So you're providing the what to Googles that a lot of people will never think to Google.
I will also say, shout out to 50 Cent because we went to the same high school, sort of. He went to Andrew Jackson. I went to what Andrew Jackson turned into. Q-Tip was supposed to go to that high school, but his mom was like, nah, because that high school was wild, crazy. It had a heroin ring in the basement at one point.
Shouts to New York City high schools having heroin rings in the basement.
But 50 doesn't get enough credit for mixtapes, period. Like, for like before
he changed the game.
Yeah, because before mixtapes were mixtapes. They were like, I'm gonna put out. Oh, you get a DJ. The DJ puts out a bunch of motherfuckers on one tape, right? 50. I don't know if anybody started doing it before him. But like would put out.
I'm 90% certain the internet has told me 50 was not the first person to do it, but he is very early on in the process.
He was not the first, but he was like the guy who
successful
carried the flag for it. He was the one that there were lots of examples.
He's the popularizer of it.
That right? Yeah, exactly.
Because that's
and maybe the most successful version of it, right? Because if you follow 50's trajectory, and this is good. We're going to start talking about 50, but whatever. He was signed to a label, like through his own volition. Like the rapper from the hood raps his ass off, gets signed to Sony by himself. No G Unit, no bunch of other motherfuckers. Just him.
No Dr. Dre, no Eminem.
Rapping talent, right? Has beef with other rappers who are more successful than him. They stab him first. Right? In the studio, they stab him.
Correct.
They blackball him. They start getting him dropped off of records with people that aren't on his label. He's onto the same label as Beyonce and Jennifer Lopez. He's got songs with them. And they go and they tell the people like, yo, take him off the record. And they take him off the record, right? Get shot up and dropped from his label. Now, that's pretty shitty. You know what I'm saying? Like we talk about Eminem.
Worst week ever type shit.
We talk about Eminem being sad because his record didn't do so good.
Because his mom was like a little bit of a drunk and like,
right. You know what I'm saying? Like 50 Cent was almost murdered and blackballed and dropped from his label. And this is when he decides he gets Banks, he gets Yayo, and he just like, I'm gonna put it out myself. I'm gonna make the music and put it out myself. He probably got one of them J-Arm CDs because he started taking other people's beats.
I promise you, he was
and
getting
doing
J-Arm CDs.
But how he flipped it is he would do the whole song. So instead of just like freestyling over the thing, he would like do a hook and everything. You know what I'm saying? And them shits was wild, crazy popular.
They were dope because at the time, like, right, like it was almost like it was in the vein of parody songs, right?
Right.
So like
right,
LL Cool J's song was "Love You, I Could Love You Better," and then here comes 50 Cent, and he's like, "What? Fuck that! I could fuck you better." You know, and everybody in New York City's like, "I like the version that's I could fuck you better."
Absolutely.
Than the Candy, non-explicit version.
And also because 50 he's an amazing songwriter. So he would do that. Like he had the song The Quali, and he was like hit him with the double barrel shotty. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just a clever, funny, dope song.
Yeah.
So, but like them shits got so popular, that's what got into the hands of Paul Rosenberg, Eminem and Dr. Dre's lawyer / manager or whatever, and then that's what like got him sort of signed like that. But like that started.
Actually, Wanksta was what got him signed. Like that was his actual first like if to put it in relative terms, right? That would have been like Pop Smoke with Dior. Like it's your first song that blows. That actually like went.
But it was out way before Get Rich or Die Trying was out.
Rich or Die Trying. Yeah, way before 8 Mile, the soundtrack. It was playing on New York City radio, and that's what kind of like it was like, whoa! Now this guy's not only is he killing the mixtape game, but he's now got a song that's ready to go national and can like if I literally put this on a soundtrack right now, I'm gonna win. You know what I mean? And that was like. That was when he got.
Yo, honestly, everything you're saying sounds like a less formal version of the Robert Greene book about 50 Cent.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But I want to wrap it around with to say is like, so his success doing that, everybody started putting out their own mixtapes and projects. Like everybody, from like big name artists to like your little fucking hood rappers and whatnot. Everybody was like doing their own like this is whatever they call it, like mixtape. And like it was because of the success that 50 had with his run. Like he got him signed to fucking Dr. Dre. So now everybody, that's how hip hop is. If somebody's successful at something, 12 other people are gonna like, try to do it too. But there was a time in New York City where it's like you would go, the mixtape guy, he would be either on the corner or he would be at the check cashing place. He would have like a blanket, or they would give him a stall, and it would be bootleg versions of anything that was out. It would be like whatever was out, it would be the bootleg version of that. It would be instrumental CDs, and then it would be like other rappers fucking shit, just like people you might not have ever heard of. Who was the dude? Graf. Graf had a bunch of fucking mixtapes. Right. You know what I'm saying? Graf is a rapper from Queens that gets a lot of respect from
Gravy is a rapper from Queens. No, Queens?
I think Brooklyn.
And he played Biggie in the Notorious movie.
Okay. Right. But New Yorkers knew him well before that from like the mixtape. Yeah, from the mixtapes and all that.
Yeah, I just think the whole idea of the
Joe
mixtape
Budden was
guy.
another one that the Super always had a mixtape that I would like, be like, I'm not buying this.
Yo, I feel like Joe Buttons rapped. Oh, Paul Kane. He rapped like a bunch of dudes all the time. It was like Joe Buttons and these two other dudes. It was like Joe Buttons, Paul Kane, and I feel like there was another dude.
I always felt like Joe Buttons and Paul Kane were being forced on me. Where I was just like, I don't want this song.
That's because they fucked with
every mixtape. Like,
they would always be at the end of the mixtape too. Because they fucked with Fabulous.
Yeah, facts.
That's hilarious.
I think it's not. They fucked with Desert Storm. I think it was always like Joe Budden, Fabulous, and Paul Kane, and it was always like Fabulous. Anyway,
Fabulous. That's the star out the movie. Yeah. I don't care about these other guys. Yeah.